June 1940, the Channel waters were dark, the night thick with mist, and the moon a pale witness to the world below. In a small English fishing village, life moved as it always had. Lamplight flickered in windows, dogs barked at shadows, and the soft slap of waves against wooden hulls was the only sound that mattered. But tonight, there was something different in the air. Something almost alive. Along the docks, men mended nets and prepared their boats as if for a regular night of fishing. Their faces were tired but calm, eyes trained on the water. Yet beneath that ordinary routine lay a secret. These were no ordinary fishermen. They had been recruited by Britain's top intelligence officers, enlisted into a mission so covert that even their wives didn't know. Their boats, simple trawlers and cobbles, were to carry hidden radios, cameras, and coded messages to track enemy movements. Every cast of their nets could be feeding the Allies' vital intelligence. Out in the waters, German U-boats prowled silently, blind to the extraordinary operations happening right under their noses. The quiet village, the gentle waves, the nets slipping into the sea, all a perfect camouflage for espionage. One wrong move, one sudden splash, and the line between life and death could vanish in an instant. These men, ordinary by appearance, were standing on a front line unseen by most. Their courage was quiet, invisible, yet crucial. And as the first boat slipped into the foggy channel, the fate of countless lives and perhaps of Britain itself hung precariously on their shoulders. They were about to leave the safety of the shore, stepping into a world where ordinary nets carried extraordinary secrets, and danger lurked beneath every wave. It began quietly, almost imperceptibly. In the summer of 1940, Britain was reeling from the fall of France and the evacuation at Dunkirk. London's streets were filled with air raid sirens and whispered rumors of invasion, but in the small fishing village of WWII, life clung stubbornly to routine. Men rose before dawn to tend their nets, women baked bread and mended clothes, and children ran barefoot along cobbled streets. Unaware that the world beyond the cliffs had changed forever, yet behind the ordinary hum of life, British intelligence officers were casting a very different net, one that reached into the village itself. They needed men who knew the sea like the back of their hands, men whose lives were as intertwined with tides, currents, and fishing routes as their own shadows. And so, in quiet whispers and discreet meetings in pubs and barns, they began recruiting John Harris. A trawler captain whose hands bore the scars of decades at sea had been among the first approached. At first, he laughed at the notion. Me? A spy? I can barely read Morse code, let alone sneak past German U-boats, he said. But the intelligence officer, a thin man with sharp eyes, simply shook his head. We don't need a spy, John. We need a fisherman. That's exactly what they'll never suspect. The brilliance of the plan lay in its simplicity. Ordinary fishing boats would become the eyes and ears of the Royal Navy. Hidden compartments were installed in the hulls to conceal radios and cameras. Nets were no longer just tools to catch herring or cod. They could carry tiny devices capable of recording ship movements, photographing enemy vessels, or transmitting coded messages under the guise of routine fishing operations. Even the smell of the salt water, the creak of the planks, and the routine chatter among fishermen served as a perfect cover. Still, fear lingered. The men were acutely aware that this was not a game. One wrong turn could mean capture or worse. Many questioned their own courage. Harris remembered standing on his deck at dawn, the horizon painted in faint orange and gray, thinking of his wife, Margaret, and their 2 children. "I'll be back by nightfall," he whispered, even though he had no idea if that would be true. Around the village, similar fears simmered. Families said goodbye at dawn with tight hugs and silent prayers, their faces betraying the same quiet anxiety. The intelligence officers were methodical. They trained the fishermen in basic signaling, the subtle language of lights and flags, and how to use concealed radios. Cameras were small, ingenious devices hidden in everyday objects, inside wooden boxes, barrels, even under benches. Every man had to memorize new codes, yet act as if nothing had changed. The training was brief but intense. The reality of war did not allow for hesitation. "Remember," one officer said, "they're looking for spies." They will never suspect the man who smells of salt, who talks about fish and tides. That is your shield. For the fishermen, the adjustment was immense. A life once defined by predictable tides now required constant vigilance. Every splash of water, every distant silhouette, became a potential threat. And yet there was a strange exhilaration in it. Harris felt it most when casting his nets for the first time with a hidden device tucked inside. He could almost hear the ocean whispering secrets only he could understand, secrets that might help Britain win the war. The village itself became a hub of quiet suspense. The pub at the harbor brimmed with coded conversations disguised as casual chatter. Children played games near the docks, unaware that every tossed ball, every shouted warning, was part of a carefully constructed theater. Even the dogs seemed to sense the tension, barking at shadows that no one else noticed. Every man, woman, and child contributed, knowingly or unknowingly, to a network of secrecy that extended across the channel, and yet the stakes remained starkly clear. Harris and his fellow fishermen were not soldiers in the traditional sense. They did not wear uniforms, nor did they carry guns. Their weapons were their knowledge of the sea, their ability to blend into the ordinary, and the ingenuity of the hidden devices they now carried. One misstep, one careless action, and the enemy would learn that the village had been a front for British intelligence all along. By the end of their first week in training, something remarkable had happened. Fear had not disappeared, but it had been tempered by purpose. The fishermen began to understand their role in a much larger story. Every net cast, every quiet patrol along the channel was a silent act of defiance. They were ordinary men, yes, but they were extraordinary in the eyes of history. Each tide carried them closer to danger, yet also closer to an unknown kind of heroism. It was on one particularly foggy morning. Harris remembered that the reality of their mission crystallized. Standing on the edge of the pier, watching his boat bob gently in the mist, he felt the weight of the unseen front lines pressing against him. Beyond the fog lay German patrols, U-boats, and countless eyes he could not see. And yet, he also felt a sense of pride, a profound connection to the silent war waging beneath the waves. The first real test came sooner than expected. Harris was given a net containing a tiny camera designed to capture the movement of a German convoy rumored to be patrolling near Dover. He had to navigate through shifting currents, dodge patrol vessels, and maintain the pretense of a casual fishing expedition. The camera itself was almost laughably small, yet its potential impact was enormous. Every cast of that net was a risk-one mistake, and months of planning could be lost in an instant. As Harris prepared to leave the harbor, he glanced back at the village. Smoke curled from chimneys, and the sea mist shimmered under the rising sun. The families waved, oblivious to the gravity of what was about to happen. The men knew that Britain's survival might depend on the ordinary routines of this quiet village. A line cast into the sea could mean intelligence intercepted, lives saved, battles won. And yet, to anyone watching, it all appeared utterly mundane. In that moment, Harris understood the paradox that defined their mission. They were ordinary men tasked with extraordinary duties. Their bravery was silent, their battlefield invisible, and as the first net slipped into the water, the channel hiding more than fish beneath its surface, they embraced a new reality, one where courage was measured not by gunfire or glory, but by secrecy, precision, and the quiet rhythm of a fishing boat gliding through the fog. And so, the village, the men, and the boats were transformed. The fishermen were no longer just men casting nets. They were the invisible eyes of Britain, the silent guardians of the channel. The mission had begun, and the first step into the unknown had already been taken. The first patrol would test everything they had learned: the fog, the tides, and the unseen enemy would soon collide in a tense dance of survival, and the fate of Britain's covert operations rested in the hands of ordinary men who were about to prove they were anything but ordinary. By mid-July 1940, the quiet fishing village had begun to pulse with a strange electric tension. On the surface, life seemed unchanged. Boats bobbed gently in the harbor. Seagulls cried overhead, and nets were mended with the same rhythmic precision as always. But beneath that calm, a web of secrecy was being woven, one so intricate that even the most observant German patrols would never suspect a thing.